this meeting now that we have everybody here. Just kidding, Superintendent Cuban. I'm hoping that our new or almost new student advisor might lead us. Oh, I'm supposed to go over some rules first. Hang on, Ava, one sec. Some rules for this evening. Welcome, everybody. It's nice to see a new table arrangement and some new faces out there. Okay, all right. Yeah, it's kind of different. It's good to see. I'm hoping everybody can remember to turn their cell phones on to the buzzer mode or silent. Tonight's board meeting is going to be live streamed on YouTube. So if you want 5 minutes of fame, come up and speak to us. Please don't swear and behave appropriately.
What happened at the last meeting?
Yeah.
Wow.
Trustees as well as speakers, please remember to speak in the microphones so it's recorded forever. And if there are members of the public that would like to speak, we have public comment forms at the back table by the door that you entered from. Public comment, you have 5 minutes to speak. And for items that are on the agenda, you can speak for 5 minutes also, but it will be at the time that that agenda item comes up. And back where I started, our new student board member, Ava Mortier, welcome. And I'm hoping, I have no flag.
I will take care of that. She's wearing red, white, and blue. I think she's just going to stand in the corner. That's exactly what I was thinking. But she's going to grab the outside one, I think.
Oh,
Oh, and they
to the
didn't bring
rescue.
it back? Tacky.
Oh, here we go.
Here we go. Perfect. All right, it worked.
Thank you, guys.
Just stay there.
Gabe, that's perfect.
All right.
All right, Ava, you're on. Welcome to the team.
Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Take that home and wash it.
Well, so good to see that our national colors are red, gray, and blue.
Yeah,
That thing's dirty.
it is dirty.
I took one home one time from the city of Ukiah because it was so dirty, and I put it in my washer. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
It came out in a million pieces.
All right, moving on to item C3. Can we have the report out from closed session, please?
Ooh, that's bad. Regarding item B8, the board made a motion to approve the request of a classified employee for a leave of absence, and it was moved by Van Sant, seconded by Mulgard. 6-0 was the vote, and it was roll call vote.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. And now our student advisors report.
Good evening. Check. Okay. Good evening. I'm Spencer Rico. I'm the former representative to the board. I'm sitting here with Ava Mortier, which is the new rep to board for this next upcoming school year. For the student report, it's kind of short because of the month of June. It's very about 2 days. But graduation occurred at Ukiah High School. There was 3 speeches and 3 performances. I'm pretty sure most of the board was there. And there more occurred in May, in late May, after the meeting of the May month meeting, and that was successful. And that's about it. But I'd like to have Ava say a few words about it.
Hey, like Spencer said, my name's Ava, and I'm going to be a senior next year, and I'm super excited for the position.
Well, welcome. And Spencer, thank you. And it's nice to see a neat face down there. Welcome.
Two of them.
I was gonna say cute.
Mine gets kind of old. So.
I was gonna say cute, and then I was like, she's a senior now. She's not a little kid anymore. This is awesome. Okay, thank you guys. Item C6, are there any items, any public comment items that are not on the agenda? None received. Okay. C7, and I'm not prepared.
Sorry, Tyler, my agenda's not up yet either. Maybe another board member can.
Do I have a volunteer board member that would like to read the items that were up for donation?
I'll read it, Tyler.
That would be awesome, thank you.
These donated to 6 elementary schools, Eagle Peak and Pomalita, 17 flats of plants for their garden from the Mendocino College Agriculture Department. Donated to teen moms at South Valley High School from Biceroptimist, our check in the amount of $100 toward the Teen Mom Program. And to Oak Manor Elementary School, from Life Touch Photography Company, check in the amount of $119.97.
Thank you for the help on that one. Is there a motion to approve the donations?
I move that we approve the donations with gratitude.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, abstentions. Motion carries. It's time for our employee reports, and it doesn't look like we have a CSEA representative tonight. And Terry DeSelke, our president from UTA, thank you.
It's on. Good evening. Thank you. Short report. Congratulations to all the graduates from Ukiah High, South Valley, the adult school, everybody that graduated. Yay. UTA has very happily given a scholarship to a student at Ukiah High, but the name escapes me, so I apologize. But we give a $1,500 scholarship each year. And I may leave early because my other ocean office calls me very early in the morning. So if I scoot out of here, that's why. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry. And congratulations for making it through the school year. All right, Dan Stearns, our team leadership report.
Good evening, board members. I think we have some slides coming up on the screen. This is the most inspirational slide you've ever seen.
Yes.
They get better. So just a quick update on the next slide about what your leaders and administrators are working on. We went through an incredible journey this year with Dr. Tom Manny as part of the CAPS network, and we're looking forward to diving in deeper next year with our teacher leaders as we look at strengthening our PLCs. You know, ultimately the most important question that we're asking is, what do we do when kids are not learning and they're not getting it? And so we're going to take a journey driven by data next year, strengthening our teams to focus on PLCs. And that'll be our second year with him. Had a really interesting hiring cycle and journeyed with HR to a number of college campuses to recruit teachers. And you should know that when a special education teacher shows up, they get half a dozen or a dozen job offers. And so by the time they get to your table, they often say, hey, Ukiah sounds really nice, but I have multiple offers, and thank you. So it's just an incredible challenge, and I know we have vacancies next year, and so we work really hard on hiring, recruiting, and retaining, but it's just an ongoing challenge. With that being said, unfortunately for us, unfortunately for Chico, we hired a few teachers whose schools and communities burned down in the fire, and so they are relocating to our area and hired some really great talent on the positive side. I'm not sure if you've heard, but we're offering the PSAT to 8th graders next year. I mean, obviously, there's lots of different pathways kids can make for their future, but anything we can do to expose kids to college-going pathways is something we should do, and so we're excited to offer that at Eagle Peak and Pomalita and to all of our 8th graders next year. We have a summer reading book called Mindset. I've read the first chapter, and we'll be reading it this summer. The end of the first chapter says, even if you can't change your mindset, this book will help you change your mindset. So some of us who've had some life experience, you know, that can be a difficult thing to do, but we're looking forward to journey going through, I can't even say the word, together this book. Next slide. Shifting just a couple notes on Eagle Peak about positive school culture. Our STEM school recruiting was almost too successful. As you see at the numbers below, we recruited 60 students within our school district to attend Eagle Peak next year and 40 from outside schools, outside UUSD schools. That's a very significant number. And we're going to make it work, and we don't need portables, but we're continuing to grow, and at some point it's going to have to probably level off or whatever. Just a quick note, if you didn't see that picture, that was a picture that a middle schooler submitted to a national photography art competition hosted by Jostens. 6,000 people, 6,000 students submitted, 90 were recognized, and mainly it was a high school competition, but this was a photo taken by an Eagle Peak student in our digital media program. So there continues to be awesome performances by kids at our school with all things STEM, and so it's going well. It's hot, and 100 new kids coming in it means that folks want the culture and the STEM at Eagle Peak, so it's great, and we'll cram everybody in. Next slide. So I'm going to give you a different data point on student achievement, a very unusual data point. So this is a picture of our staff on an Autism Awareness Day, all in their autism support T-shirts. We had 5 students in the program who showed up not being able to use the bathroom and showed up in diapers every single day. And so we made it a goal, the team made it a goal, and really the whole school, because it really takes a whole village to support these kiddos, to work on toileting these students, because as important to the academic skills, like reading, are the functional life skills, because ultimately we want these students to get jobs. We want them out in the community as much as possible. Many future residences for these students will not take them if they cannot independently use the bathrooms. So this was a huge success for us, that these 5 students learned to use the bathroom independently over the course of the year. And some of the members of the autism team couldn't make it tonight, but it's just a huge success for those kids. I mean, the other piece, of course, is communication and learning how to read and express yourself. So anyways, we work really hard on those functional life skills, and I'm super excited to share that. It's one of the biggest successes we've ever had in the program. So again, enthusiastic to share that. Jumping back to a previous slide that we don't need to do, I will say I'm amazed every summer how much we're doing on our school campuses. We never used to do stuff because we didn't have any money. Things would just break and you'd survive and you'd Band-Aid, but we're now kind of proactively fixing things, building things, working on facilities at a level I've never seen in my 20 plus years in Ukiah Unified. It never used to be that way. So we're in a great place, and Gabe and the crew, of course, are doing a great job, and that was just another thought that I had. When you go to our campuses, they're busy in summer with great maintenance projects, et cetera. Any questions? Or comments? Great, thank you.
Thank you, Dan. All right. We are moving on to our Ds.
Good evening, board members. Superintendent Cuban. Previously, administration was directed to explore the feasibility of a school improvement bond measure. We've done that by conducting a community opinion survey with the help of Greg Isom of Isom Advisors. He's the district's financial advisor, and Greg is here to share the outcome of the survey.
Perfect. You're a clicker, or should I just? I can just give.
Thanks for coming, Greg.
Excited to be here. Excited to present good news. I guess I'm supposed to say that. Okay. So the methodology of the survey. So if you recall, when you do a voter opinion survey, even though you have 20,000 registered voters in the district, you're not supposed to call every single one. You're supposed to, we only give them a specific sample that fits the parameters of a specific voter that shows up at a specific date. And we want to try to get a hold of them as many as we can with a maximum of 400. The problem is, as of late, is that your younger voters no longer want to take surveys on the phone anymore. So it's nearly impossible to get to 400 voters right now. So what we did on the flip side was, instead of surveying just not including younger voters, we just added in an extra 40 to 50 senior citizens, okay? So just be aware that the results of the survey is probably the most conservative response level based off of how many people took it, but as I said, about how many senior citizens took it, because that's not completely representative of your community at large. So we started on Monday, April 22nd, went through Thursday, April 25th. We tested voter attitudes about the district, ideological questions, projects, tax rates, and just the overall concept of a bond. 323 households were contacted, margin of error plus or minus 5.41%. You want to be right around 5.5% plus or minus or lower is considered to be an accurate scientific study survey. So on page 3, we wanted to give them just a little bit of a softball question, make them feel comfortable with the format of the survey. So we start off with saying, well, generally speaking, we say that education in California is headed in the right direction or the wrong direction. And you can see that almost 50% of the people that took the survey said, we think it's going in the wrong direction. 29% said right direction, 24% said, I don't know. Is this a good response or a bad response is probably what you're thinking. This is pretty standard in California right now, where I think the vast majority of voters aren't thrilled with what's going on, just globally. But then the follow-up question that we asked them was, well, from what you know or what you've heard, because obviously there's a lot of people who have no idea what's going on in your district, how would you rate the quality of education provided by the Ukiah Unified School District? And you can see those numbers there from, 55% said excellent or good, a third of your voters said fair, 5% didn't know, and 8% said poor. And you're going to ask, how does this compare, or is this good news or bad news? You have no idea. As far as I'm concerned, this is actually pretty good news, that your voters think that you guys are doing a good job. If only 8% of your voters think you're doing a poor job, that's considered pretty low. 5% of your voters who have no idea, I thought that actually number would have been higher, but maybe since we said from what you've heard, people probably said, well, I don't know, fair, I guess. But overall, that's a good question. So you can see how people feel about California education compared to you guys. There's a big difference. At the end of the survey, we asked for statistical purposes. Do you have any children or grandchildren, or have you ever had any children or grandchildren attend schools in the Ukiah Unified School District? And you can see that almost 40% of the people that took the survey have absolutely zero connection to your schools. Right, so that'll tell you that that's a conservative voter. So not only is it senior citizens, but senior citizens that have no connection whatsoever, right?
How does that compare with other places you've been?
The 37% never. It's kind of in the middle. Like I'll say like West Sonoma County normally is like maybe, high 40s. Humboldt County, kind of similar to these numbers that I see right here. So this isn't, super rare, but I think the response level is what makes it unique of this type of voter. So on page 4, a lot of people call these the popularity questions on who voters like and who they don't like. But the only concept or aspect of the survey that I'm trying to figure out is, does something stand out which doesn't make sense to me? Okay, and I'm going to explain what this means. So we asked voters, hey, can I ask you a couple of questions on how you feel about different aspects of the districts, from teachers, principals, superintendent, district's job at managing finances, and board of trustees. And so we rank them from most popular, just so people can feel warm and fuzzy. But the only thing that I actually pay attention to on this question is that green category. Do people think that you guys are doing a poor job? Okay, and how it ranks, it goes teachers, superintendent's actually number 2 on poor, or least amount of poor. Principals, Board of Trustees, and then district's job at managing its finances, okay? That is the order that it's supposed to look like. Sometimes superintendent, principal flips, sometimes board and superintendent can flip-flop in between the two. But if teachers weren't number one and district's job at managing finances wasn't at the bottom of the poor list, I would say that there's a weird, perception going on in the district, okay? So this is what I would consider a normal-looking school district. And then you're gonna say, well, man, is that poor? Is that supposed to be that large? For district's job at managing its finances, unless you're like 20% or above negative, people think for the most part that you guys are doing a good job. Like I can remember when I did a story for Healdsburg like 6 years ago, even though, they were basic aid and they had all this money coming into the district, they were like negative for all these years. And for whatever reason, just the voter perception was that they're doing this horrible job of managing their money. And it was like 23%, 24% negative, even though the reserves were like 40%. But that's just the perception that the community had. And so part of our job, what we needed to do for the next 6 months for that district was kind of flip, that script a little bit to make people feel more warm and fuzzy about its finances.
Could I just ask a question on that one?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, if I were living in Healdsburg and 40% of the money was in a reserve, that means you may not be fixing buildings and doing other things like that. So I would think you were doing a lousy job of managing your money. And, that's kind of a flip.
Yeah,
question.
that's where, every community is different on how they respond to these questions and what's going on at the specific time. And so, as I said, what we found out it had to do with, because I think they gave lifetime benefits for all these years. As I said, they were negative certified for all these years. And so I think just them getting hammered in the paper for 5 or 6 straight years just put a negative feeling in people's minds when it came to finances. They love their teachers, principal, superintendent, they love the board, but when it came to that specific question, it was bad. But you don't need to worry about it for you guys because it's good. Okay, some ideological questions. Good schools improve property values. Do you agree or disagree with that statement? 92% agree with that statement, 4% don't know, 4% disagree. If you were below 90%, I'd say there's a perception problem. You shouldn't be below 90% right now. What we've noticed, though, in the last year or two is that this number is sliding down a little bit because people are thinking, man, it doesn't matter where I necessarily live, my property values are going to go up regardless of the school district. But you guys are above 90% is good. We asked this question just to see what voters thought or if they pay attention to what's going on in the news. Because the state continues to reduce funding for facility improvements such as renovation, modernization of classrooms, local voters need to do more to protect the quality of facilities. 73% agreed with that statement, 17% disagreed, 10% didn't know. You're on the lower end of that. Most of the time voters are right around like 75 to 80% agree with that statement, so you're just a little bit lower. But once again, if you think about the demographic of the voter that took this survey, it may make a little bit of sense. But 73% is still high, but it's not like, what kind of the norm is in the North Bay, I should say. So now we kind of, hit them right in the gut, and we say, at this time, district's looking to make some classroom facility improvements, considering doing a school improvement bond measure. Let me read you the proposed language. So they actually read this yellow box to improve the quality of education, blah, 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 blah. 88 million, big number. 4.9 million annually, what? Makes no sense. 6 cents per $100 of assessed value. Most people are probably confused even when hearing this. And the reason why we do it the specific way is because a lot of times when people vote on this, they're confused on how this stuff works. And so we want to know, without having any information on what projects are going to be completed or even what this is going to cost you, just how do you feel right out of the gates? And you can see that 57% said yes, about 4% were leaning yes, 10.5 undecided, 1% lean no, 27.5 said no. The lean yes and the lean no, these are voters who they initially responded, I'm undecided, and then they were asked further and they said, well, I hear you're undecided, but are you leaning yes or are you leaning no? Oh, okay, well, I'm leaning yes, right? Because that's a different type of voter. So when you put the two together, you're about 60.7% of the voters are saying yes to this number right here without any information. On the next two pages, pages 7 and 8, is where we went over the facility projects. A lot of this based off of the master plan that you guys have, some feedback, and what you can see, what we actually did here was put your most popular 5 in the front, and then I'll explain the back page. But you can see that 70%, probably closer to almost 75% of all these projects here where your voters said, I'd be more likely to vote for a bond if I knew money was going to be going towards these projects. This is pretty standard statewide. These are almost always the most popular projects up and down the state of California. You would think, wow, like they don't want to put their money towards a brand new building. Most people, voters now, I mean, maybe 15 years ago that was the case, but most voters, like, if they had any of these problems on their specific home, they would put money towards fixing these projects, right? So when we go to the next page, this is the next 6 projects. Organize them, you know, from most popular to least popular. You can see that all the projects are actually supported over that 55% level. When I get to this page here, I'm less concerned about the red and the yellow, and I'm more focused on that orange and green to determine, do you have any projects that I would say is a dead on arrival project? You know, meaning this project is so strongly not, you know, unsupported or not supported, whatever you want to say, that you should strict this project, you know, take this off the list immediately. And I don't think any of the projects on this list here or on the previous page are ones you'd say take this off, or else if this is on here, you're going to lose. You know, so a lot of the times the projects on page 8 here that are problematic are if you just like a district wanted to build a new district office. You know, that's a bad project 99 times out of 100. The bottom projects is when sometimes you'll see like, you know, a performing arts theater where people say, man, we really, really need this. And you find out that your community doesn't really care for it. You know, sometimes swimming pools are on this project. Sometimes this is where, you know, a football fields or, a big stadium is on the bottom. We take this project off the list. But according to our records, and if you think about the people who are taking this, all your projects are supported, and I don't think there's a fear to take anything off. You can see we kind of grouped a bunch of things, you know, from modernized, outdated classroom investment, school physics. That means a whole variety of things, and that's strongly supported almost 70% when you say it in a generalized statement, okay? So overall, good support for the projects. Now remember, bonds cost money. A lot of people are unaware of that, but they do actually cost money. So we tell them that it costs money. And he said, well, what if you knew that the proposed measure would cost property owners $65 per 100,000 of assessed valuation? Because this is how it's going to read in the tax rate statement. This is how it's going to read everywhere. When people say, well, how much is it going to cost me? Since I have no idea what the person's assessed valuation is, you can only phrase it this way. So when you phrase it at $65, which legally you can't even ask your voters to approve $65, but we're asking a higher number to see where is their threshold, okay? And the $65 number, you can see that 52%, over half of them said, yeah, you can count me in. 40% said no. 1% lean yes. When we went to the maximum of $60, we gained 1% to the yes category. The no vote was still 40. For whatever reason, when we went from 60 to 50, I mean, that number I'll bet you could have been like 59.95. And I'll bet you we probably would have seen similar results right here. So for whatever reason, when you dip below that 60 number, results went up 7%. And it was almost like the no vote slid over as well. Right? So probably some no's went to the lean no, to the don't know, to the lean yes, but all those guys slid over to the 60%. When you go to $45, super strong support, gained an additional 5 percentage points on the yes, the no dropped 3 percentage points. So I think, you know, your magic number, you know, is somewhere in between 50 and $60. But the most important question of the entire survey is on page 11. And we asked this question specifically right after the tax rate question, which is kind of like, you know, what's the worst response that we could get? And it's by asking it again. We said, well, now that you've heard all this information, you heard about the projects, you heard that there's a cost to it, the average voter who takes these surveys assumes that because we don't tell them what cost it is, they probably assume that's the higher number, and they're not going to assume the lower number when taking the survey. And you can see that your results actually went up, which for the most part is a little unusual. Most of the time, the results either kind of stay the same or they drop a little bit, right? Because that's what's fresh in their mind is the cost of things. So what does that tell us when we're looking at the survey? So you can see you gained 3.4 percentage points. The lean yes went down by 1%. The undecided, you can see the undecided voters kind of split, right? They said anything they're going to go yes, I'm a little bit going to go no. But what this tells us is that your district isn't necessarily tax sensitive, but they are pro-project, okay? So when your results go down on this page here, that tells us that it's a little too rich, and even though they really like the projects, they'd rather hold on to their pocketbooks, right? But when it goes up, it says that they're generally okay with paying if they can get these projects that we just mentioned. So conclusions and recommendations. My opinion and the opinion of the survey is that people think you guys are doing a good job. They like you guys. If there was a problem, it would have shown on those first, pages 3 or 4. The bond measure went up after more information was given, after the tax rate questions were given, within the margin of error. All the projects tested over 55%. Our recommendation is, this doesn't mean that you're doing a bond. This just means that this is the first step of exploring the bond. The next step takes place from right now, let's just call it July, all the way to mid-October, which is where we talk to key stakeholders and get their buy-in and say, hey, this is what we're thinking about doing and why. This is what our survey said. If we put something forward like this, do you think we could count on your support, type of a thing? So that's going to take place in the next 4-5 months or so. And here's the timeline. I have March 2020, because I think last time I discussed, I think March could be a really, really cool election date for school districts, a good one for passing measures. You can kind of see the steps on the right-hand side of what's been completed and what still needs to take place. So you can see the public information program, which is speaking to the key people, goes all the way to October. And based off of that feedback is when we kind of, make our bond program, okay? Because your average community member right now says, yes, they support you. They support the tax rate, they support the projects, they support the bond amount. 88 million did not scare them. Whether it's 40 million or 80 million, it's just a big number, right? And that number didn't scare your voters. And so what we need to do is get the feedback from the key people. We get that feedback, mix it with this feedback, and that's going to determine what our final tax rate's going to be, if there's any projects that we need to remove from what your master plan says to ask your voters to approve. And then we bring something forward to you in November to officially vote on if everything is still looking positive. If things are not looking positive, or some feedback comes back horrible, or something happens horrible in the economy, or something happens horrible in the district, we pull the plug, we're not going in March, and we look at November. But as of right now, things are looking still very positive for school districts. We've been conducting surveys up and down the state of California, and voter sentiment is still positive towards, putting money towards education. So that's my presentation. I'll answer any questions you guys may have.
When you see results like this, how often do they fail?
The bond measures. Like, I know I'm not asking you to guarantee, but give me a percentage surety.
Of my
you are-
surveys that look like this, how many of them have failed?
And ultimately fail when they actually go to the voters. And let's assume there's not an economy crash or something like that.
0.
Really? Okay.
The surveys that I've done, when you're in the 60s, and there's nothing.
Even though we're barely in the 60s.
Well, you got to include your lean yes,
Oh, okay.
because not all your lean yeses and undecided voters and lean no's are all going to vote no,
Okay.
right? So if you're in the 60s
With
and there's no problems, right? Economy scandal, something horrible happening, you're going to win 100%.
Scandal meaning like a district scandal, so
Yes.
if we don't blow it.
Don't screw it up, Megan.
Okay,
No.
all right. Try not to. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, B.
So this last bond that didn't go through in LA, are you feeling that was because it was towards salaries as opposed?
Yeah. One, that was a parcel tax.
Okay,
So parcel taxes are very different than school bonds. Parcel taxes
Okay.
go towards salary, goes towards raises.
yeah.
You have to get 2/3 voter approval. And I believe there was $1 million to $2 million spent against it. If you have $2 million spent against your bond, I can guarantee you 100% you are going to lose.
Thanks.
Yes.
I was just curious in procedure, when your people call and the person isn't home, do they usually call back? Because you lost a vote at my house. My husband was out for 10 minutes, and it would have been a positive vote, so I'm feeling really
It would
badly.
have skewed the results, and I couldn't have used them. What they're supposed to do is they're supposed to go through, as I say, we give them parameters. So we say, you can only call these voters, and they're only supposed to call within a certain time frame, and they're supposed to go through it 3 straight days to get as many as they can with these parameters. And so if someone, didn't answer it the first night and they didn't get through the second one, tried maybe the third one, it happens.
Oh, no, they never called back. I was just
How
curious.
dare they?
Yeah.
Because
I wouldn't let him go out for 2 hours after he came back.
Well, they never
No,
call.
you gotta
They're not
answer
supposed.
this.
They're not supposed to call twice in a day. They're not supposed to.
I'm just curious.
I think that's it. Greg, thank you. It's so
Thank you.
nice to see these results.
Yep.
It's really awesome to hear that our community wants to help us rebuild the schools because they could use some TLC. So thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Tyler, I'm sorry, can I ask one more question? Just out of curiosity. In the age of cell phones, how do you get telephone numbers? And
Well,
I'm thinking of
well,
future things you have to call
It's
about.
challenging because some people will give their cell numbers to the county when they register or they remove their other one. But the vast majority of people, I mean, the county doesn't have my cell number. I don't have a home line, so they don't have my number. There are some companies where you have to pay all this extra money who will go and research cell records in your community and then try to match it in a file. And I didn't think that we really needed to waste the money for that when we could get these results.
Yeah, I'm just curious how, and as you proceed, how you handle that.
Yeah, I mean, and truth be told, the person who has a cell phone that doesn't have a landline, 8 times out of 10 is our type of supporter.
Well, that was my concern, so if that's the case, then
Yeah,
it's not a concern.
not a concern.
Okay.
All right.
Great,
thank
thanks.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
All right, item D2. The public hearing is open to discuss the 2019-2020 proposed budget for adoption. Thank you, Penny.
You are welcome. And here we go. I always make my agenda so I don't forget anything. I do want to make sure I thank our accounting department, fiscal services director, Katie Aguilar, who must have stepped out for a moment. She, Christy Bryan, and Adams did a wonderful job with managing our budget. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. They do a wonderful job. So here's our usual budget LCAP reporting cycle. And this is where we see exactly where we are and what numbers we're looking at. We're going to be looking at the estimated actuals, which is our final report before we close the books for 18-19, the current year. And then we're going to be mainly looking at the 19-20 budget for adoption. This summer, they'll close the books on 18-19, and we'll present our actuals in September. And then the 3 different colors in the cycle indicate the 3 different years of budget that we work with throughout the year. This is kind of a busy slide, but this came directly from the school services May revision workshop. And I wanted to just show you that the LCFF funding from the January budget, that's the top row, the LCFF funding went from a little over $2 billion to a little under $2 billion. And so that is why in January, we were looking at a 3.46 COLA, and the May revise has it set 0.2% less at 3.26. And then right below that, you can see one-time discretionary funding. This Governor Newsom, is not a fan of the one-time money as Governor Brown was. That if you recall, we had one-time funds budgeted several years in a row. Governor Newsom apparently wants to put it toward the COLA, and is always ongoing, and we like ongoing money, but I think we'll kind of miss the one time too. This shows the special education, the extent of the amount of money that the state is wanting to spend on special education in addition to just the usual. And this, the bottom row is the CalSTRS proposal, which is going to help us a lot, that we'll see a little more detail on, reducing the increase in our pension costs for the district. So, other programs, this is the actual amounts, and so that's, the pension cost is those percentages on every dollar of certificated salary. So we're seeing some significant decreasing of the increases. They're still increasing, but they're not increasing at the level that we had been projecting and budgeting for. And then this is what I find really frustrating, is all of that special education money. Initially, they had a plan for it, which Ukiah Unified would have received a good amount of money. But it's looking now as if they're going to try to equalize funding for districts throughout the state. And since we're the second highest SELPA funding level in the state, that means we'll lose out on any of that money. But we will be held harmless, and they won't try to take any money away from us because we're highly funded. But the one good part is that we're hearing that, and this will be finalized in the enacted budget, that there will be some money for 3- and 4-year-olds with IEPs. And then, but we don't know exactly what that'll look like yet. And then all the SELPAs are getting the full COLA, so that's a good thing. So I was expecting that we could, that really get some good funding, but it's not. If that equalization is what actually is signed, we will get nothing because of the level that we're already funded. So this is the look at our 18-19 estimated actuals. And so this is very, very summarized. This is the general fund. I'm showing you the unrestricted side and the restricted side, and then the two combined. Usually, if you recall, we mostly look at the unrestricted because our restricted side programs are all required to balance themselves unless, like special education, we contribute from the unrestricted side to that restricted program. But what this shows us, and I didn't quite have room for my big bubble that says, remember, this is just an estimate until we close the books in the summer. But it does look favorable. We are looking to have our 9% reserve, considering our undesignated or unallocated ending fund balance, plus our reserve fund of 17. And then the additional money over the 9% is the 1.175 in the far right-hand lower row and columns. So that's what we're looking at is to end the year, but there's still a lot that goes on, so it'll change. So now we're going to get into the next year's budget and our standard budget assumptions. This is where I like to explain that our budget is built based on the board's goals, maintaining fiscal solvency, and of course implementing our LCAP, which we also call our strategic plan. And that's what serves as a driving force as we allocate all these funds so that we can improve student achievement. Our estimated average daily attendance is 5588, which is real steady from I think we ended P2, we ended P2 this year at 5588, and prior to that it was 5586. So just real steady there. COLA 3.26, which I already mentioned, and then the unduplicated pupil percentage, which is part of that calculation for our supplemental concentration grant that's about $13 million now, is at 78.64%. So here's the difference in our local control funding formula. And I went ahead and showed this current year. And if you recall, the last time we saw the budget was at second interim in March, taking that picture from the end of January. And then the 1920 proposed budget, the difference with that reduction of 0.2% on the COLA, equaled, right about 150,000 less. And then just negligible amount of change for 18-19, which is good because we don't want it to change too much. So here's our multi-year projection. And I list up there all the revenues, and then the contributions, which that large amount of red is a majority of that is to our special education fund, actually on the restricted side, because this is all unrestricted right now that we're looking at. And then I did want to indicate when you see, there's another page that shows the fund balance part, but I like to split it up so it's just, not too difficult to read. But when you see the increase in the difference from revenues, expenditures, and other financing sources, those increases, there is something missing from that. And that is the fact that we don't know what the fair share formula for salary compensation, which we have an agreement with UTA, we don't know what that will be for next year yet. Because if you recall, in October, we're going to take the closed books from this year and do a true-up based on the estimate and then what actually happened and what should have happened. And then we're going to add that to the estimate for next year. And we do that in October, and then we'll know how much, if any, there will be of a salary compensation increase. And so since that's not in those numbers, I want to make really clear that they may look good and high, but there's expenditures that may not be in there yet. And I know that I said the same thing last year, so it may be, as long as we use the fair share formula, that's probably what you'll hear. So this again, this is the fund balance portion, and it's, I apologize because I didn't put the years at the top of this slide. But as you can see, we start with the estimated actuals on the far left column of numbers, and then at the top, the 134,000 is the proposed budget 1920, and then we have 2021 and 21-22 as we go out, which is required for a multi-year projection, current year and 2 additional. And as you can see at the bottom in the nice yellow, we have our 9% reserve and then excess of that. But again, we don't have potential salary increases in there. I wanted to recap the 18-19 one-time funds that we do still have, and that they were moved to the restricted side so that we could easily track them. To resource 9525, the amount's $929,171 with the purpose for facility needs to be determined, and those will just carry forward into 1920 when we close the books, and they'll stay on that in that restricted resource until we use them. So I wanted to talk a little bit about significant impacts and contingencies. You will recall we're doing some changes with the programs in special education, moving some of them from district sponsored, I guess, or provided to SELPA provided. And then the SELPA had also been using up at a fairly significant pace reserves. So when school services did the SELPA review, we asked them to provide a multi-year projection because I think all the districts needed to know what to expect. Because when we use up all those reserves, then there's going to be reductions. So anyway, they did do the multi-year projection, but because we're going into a new year, there needs to be one more additional year that we'll request from them so that we can have fully 1920 and then 2021 and 21-22. I think we're missing that final year since we're going into a new year. And that's something new for them. In the past, they had never done multi-year projections. So I'm sure that we'll be getting that maybe as they close the books too. Another thing on our what we need to be aware of is our minimum wage increase, which does impact some of our classified salary schedule. And then I had mentioned to, some of you may have heard, our workman's compensation rate increased almost a percentage, which is on every dollar of salary except overtime, so it's a significant impact. So we really will probably be doing more than we already do as far as employee safety training and so forth, because it's based significantly on the experience of our workman's comp claims and the prior 3 years. So we had a really good, or a good year fall off and a really bad year come on. And this year, though, is looking to be a good year, and we're almost done with it. So I think that will be good for the future.
Not much time for things to go wrong.
Yes, yes. The last thing, just again, the pension cost increases. While we're getting some relief, they're still increasing. And then, of course, our unfunded facility needs. And then here's that slide that I prepared for the minimum wage increase, and it shows where we're compliant now and then where we need to get to. And I kind of color-coded that by year of, they're kind of ratcheting up the minimum wage requirements to get to the $15 an hour, and that'll be effective January 1st, 2022. Oh, man. So this is the same slide you've seen before on our unfunded facility needs. I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention because it's significant, and that's why we're doing our school improvement bond measure feasibility study. So this is a requirement of this public hearing and for the board to approve along with the adopted budget at the next board meeting. Our education protection account, it's just in law. It's already part of our local control funding formula. It's not in addition to, but it was, it's been since 2012, I believe, and there's certain things that we cannot spend it on, administrator salary, so we just kind of backfill for instructional salary and benefits. It's not extra money, it's just there, but we have to promise that we're not spending it on administrator salaries, and then it has to be published on the website annually. And then this is another requirement, our reserve level substantiation. There was some trailer bill language that was placed in, I think it was 2 to 3 years ago, that said that the reserves for districts couldn't be more than 2 times the reserve for economic uncertainty, which is 3%. So that would mean that anything above 6%, if certain things occur, then we would have to spend to that level. There's, everybody thinks it's a horrible law, and they're trying to get it just completely repealed. They did get a little bit of, there was something they did that would make it harder for it to be triggered. But then the substantiation for having a higher reserve, other than common sense, is that the governing board commits to maintaining a prudent level of financial resources to protect against the need to reduce services because of temporary revenue shortfalls or unpredicted expenditures. They just want us to have, a reason for having the higher reserves. And so here, this was, I thought, really interesting. The state budget reserve level for 1920 is projected to be 11.5%. And our reserve level is required to be 9%. The Government Finance Officers Association recommends a minimum of 2 months' expenditures, which comes to around 17%. But when I showed you the estimated actuals, and it said 9% we met, and then we had the money above. Well, if you do the calculation, it ends up being about 10.5%. So I didn't know if the board might think if it was time for us to look at increasing our required reserve level, or I just thought I would just put that out there. So.
Taking any opportunity she can.
And then other funds, moving right along. Other funds, these are the, our general fund is our main operating fund of the district. These are other funds, and you could look at them like little bank accounts at the treasurer's office that are specifically for the purpose for which they're used, if that makes sense. But I try to always do like last year's actuals. We've got an estimate for this year and then the proposed ending balance for next year. They're all positive. and that's a good thing. So next steps, the governor's going to enact the budget, so it's going to possibly change everything I just did, but hopefully not very much, and I'll bring you back what those changes are in August, which you're probably used to. Katie and the crew will close the books for 18-19, and we'll present that to you in September, and then we get to calculate our true-up, which is always exciting, and then back again in December, we'll be back into that first interim. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you.
And just a reminder to the board, we present the budget tonight, and then we approve it at the next meeting, which would be Thursday at noon.
Thank you very much.
Any questions? Penny, I have one before you sneak away.
Okay.
As you know, I'm a huge proponent of saving money because, you know, the rough times are coming. But in the recent past, you haven't been real excited about raising that reserve. What about tonight is different?
I wouldn't say that I hadn't been excited about it. Well, because we had talks even this past year on budget reductions, so it just seems like if we have this extra money, even though it could be going toward any salary increase will be ongoing, so it could significantly impact what that additional money is. I just thought that if we could strive, even if we didn't make it always to a bit higher, I do, a lot of indicators are that a recession is very, very close. So I just think it would be prudent because we have so many wonderful programs that, if once we start not getting fully funded for whatever the COLA may be, we could have to do reduction. It could help. It's just always, because it's just one-time money. It's just, once you spend it, it's gone. But it's that cushion that allows us that planning time, because you guys have done such a wonderful job with that, really. To be poised if we need to make those corrections, you guys are right there, willing to do it. Not that anybody ever wants to, but.
Thank you. This public hearing,
Tyler, can I just say?
we're not closed yet.
Oh, we're not closed yet. Just
No,
one little
close me.
question. So, everybody's trying to crystal ball it. So what are you hearing from people? The county is currently pleasantly surprised that the indications are not that the recession's going to hit in 19.
The other day I talked about leading indicators, and there were several that were there, but I can't off the top of my head. I think the housing starts have been low for a while, and that's one of them. And just the length of the time that we've been in growth, there's always going to be.
How long can we say winter is coming?
Right.
I don't know. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Penny. The public hearing is closed. A new public hearing is open. Pursuant to Government Code Section 4217.12, to consider and receive public comment on findings related to an energy service agreement with FAMAND Incorporated, DBA Indoor Environmental Services. Penny, you are on again.
Okay, thank you. So the Government Code, Section 4217, requires that the board make a finding whether it's in the best interest of the district and whether the anticipated cost to the district for services provided under an energy service agreement will be less than the anticipated marginal cost to the district of electrical or other energy that would have been consumed by the district in the absence of the energy service agreement. And I wanted to go ahead and read that because it's very specific, and we're going to answer that question for you.
And Penny, before you keep going,
Sure.
Just a reminder, in May, we had a board meeting and we had a presentation on the HVAC system at Grace Hudson and some solar energy savings that we could use to pay for the HVAC. These next items are related to that. We were supposed to come back with the detail on contracts and plans and such.
Yes, thank you for that. So the energy services agreement with Indoor Environmental Services on the agenda tonight complies with Government Code Section 4217.12 based on the cost of the agreement, which is $6,750,269, compared to a guaranteed solar power generation savings of $13,467,077 over the life of the project. And I'm going to give you some generalities about the project, and then if you ask any detail, I'm going to refer to Gabe Sherman, our Director of MOT, and then possibly also Jennifer Butler from IES and John Burdette, I got it right, are here also in case you have questions. So in general, the project will provide at Grace Hudson installation of single-unit heat and air units in the Grace Hudson classrooms, abandonment of the current underground hot water loop and existing chiller boiler. And you recall that that was those, I want to say crusty pipes, but, corroded. New appropriately sized chiller at the ARC, abandoning the McQuay units, which I think are the controls at the ARC, install a new boiler at the ARC, and keep the chilled water system. We're going to install solar systems at Calpella, Eagle Peak, and Grace Hudson, our 3 PG&E sites, and then retrofit lighting at 8 various sites in the district. So the entire contract has been thoroughly reviewed and approved by the district's legal counsel and Director of MOT, Gabe Sherman, who has a background working in the solar industry. We've used our legal counsel's standard energy services agreement and general terms and conditions, having worked through numerous details with IES to mutual agreement. The project will include 2 phases. Phase 1 is a major equipment procurement. There'll be 2 installments to that. And the first installment will be in the amount of $571,744, and that'll be to purchase solar panels and inverters as soon as possible to lock in the price before substantial possible material increases due to tariffs. So this payment would occur as soon as the contract is awarded, the notice to proceed is delivered, IES then orders the materials and invoices the district. The district would be, and we would pay that. The district is protected by doing that because we will own the equipment, IES will carry builder's risk insurance on it, and the equipment will be stored at the UUSD warehouse. That was a little bit unusual because at that point, we probably won't have the full financing secured. But I would propose that we go ahead and use the one-time money that we have for facilities and then pay it back to that when we get our financing. Installment 2 includes no payment until the financing has been received. Once financing is received, additional materials would be ordered and invoiced accordingly in the amount of 1.35, a little bit more, million. And then phase 2 is the solar installation and energy conservation work, including lighting, HVAC, and DDC controls installation. That's everything else for a little over $4.8 million for the total project cost of $675,269. And so upon the board's approval of the contract, which is the next item after this public hearing, administration would like to request that the phase 1 little over $500,000 be paid from the one time. I just mentioned that, so I'm repeating myself. And then that would be repaid once we receive the financing. So that's kind of the money piece. And so if you have any questions on the project or the contract or anything, Gabe may be able to recite it in his sleep at this point. But we're very confident that we reached a really good contract.
Yes, B.
Penny, I just want to ask you,
you're feeling good about this project?
Yes,
Yes, because you're always cautious.
Yes.
And I really appreciate that. Okay.
yes, I have to say that Gabe has done a tremendous job. Honestly, the contract is probably, with, a lot of it is the insurance documents and so forth, but the 50 or so pages of terms and conditions, thoroughly vetted, every clause, and then the energy services agreement that's 15 pages was our legal counsel standard. We did start this project with IES's contract, and we reverted to ours, and they were amenable to that as we worked through all the details. And it wasn't me so much, I was oversight, but Gabe got in there with all the details, and I'm sure Jennifer and John could confirm that, absolutely.
It's the hardest money they've ever earned.
Yes, and I don't know if, Gabe, we want to talk a little bit about the project overall? That'd be great, because I know you know it inside now.
So first of all, does anyone have any questions or have any other further comment you'd like me to make before I kind of dive into the oversight? Okay, so that brief that Penny just read you kind of is the overarching of it. I think what I'd really highlight is this is a good time to be doing this. Energy, the energy that is going to be delivered to us in California is as we know, not as uncertain, is more uncertain than it was in the past. The solar that we put out in the sites, just to be clear to everyone, if and when power does get turned off or goes out, it will not continue to generate. But what we can pretty much bank on is that our rates are going to be increasing. The numbers that have been shared with you, when IES punched the numbers and did the financials, they use a pretty standard rate. And in fact, it's the California Energy Commission's standard for these type of projects, which is a 4% escalation in energy rates every year. And I think that we're going to see, we'll be lucky if we see that, quite frankly. I think we're going to see quite a bit more than that in the very near future. So when we talk about putting in solar, something that generates energy, it's an investment for us, because the sooner we put it in, the sooner it's generating and paying off for us. People who have had solar for 10 years are really happy right now because they paid off their investment and they're now generating their own power. So that's cash flow that goes directly back into where we need it. The other highlights of this proposal, obviously, is Grace Hudson, is the central plant we have, which is, we talk about it down in the yard as our own little private ticking time bomb. We don't know when it's going to go out. When it gets cold out, I don't sleep quite often because I worry about, we have been lucky in the past when it went down, and that it went down right before spring break, or it was kind of a balmy time in which having that air down didn't cause a huge discomfort to the site. But if we're faced with the possibility of having it go down in the dead of winter, and frankly, that would be, it would be hard to get heating to a school site when that's down. So it's something we've all acknowledged we really need to address, and this is really the only feasible option we have to address this in the near term. And I think it's a good one. I think IES is the plan they came up with the when we asked them to explore the possibility just as a feasibility study. It's a workable plan for us, and I think it'll also benefit our neighbors and our partners down there, which is the ARC, because also keep in mind that site costs about twice as much to heat and cool as it should. I mean, it's the newest school we have, and its energy rates are very high. And the last one, Penny mentioned the lighting upgrades to many of the other sites. So if you remember with Prop 39, we did about half of our school sites, and that was a complete LED upgrade. So all of our sites, interior and exterior, went to LED lights. Dan maybe can talk about what that meant to Eagle Peak and the quality of light they have. So it's not just our energy savings, it's the quality that brings back to the school. That site has fantastic lighting now. The color render in the classrooms is very, very nice. And some of our older sites were not done in that Prop 39 because we didn't have the funding. This would then go through and take care of those classrooms. So classrooms where we still have fluorescent lighting, this would also add to that, so. Okay, thank you.
Anne?
This might be a question more for the proposed contractors, but I'm wondering, does anybody ever build a facility that includes a generator, or I guess it's not a generator, I guess it's batteries, to really store power for very long, or are they just still so expensive that they're not affordable?
So I can probably address that.
Okay.
So energy storage, basically battery banks or maybe to a lesser extent fuel cells are becoming more common. It's really the next step for schools, but it's really not intended to back up a school or provide energy. It's more to kind of leverage when you're paying back, when you're putting your power back into the grid. So it would be hard. It's at this point, I don't think it's very feasible to consider powering a school when the power is down through either batteries, so through either a generator you've stored in batteries or in a generator. It's doable. I think it's outside of our means. I think we really do need to look at our critical loads, and I think there are areas where we need to target having a backup capacity, either through a generator or through batteries or fuel cells, but that would be very limited. So what I'm talking about is kind of our central kitchens, freezers to make sure that we're not losing hundreds of thousands of dollars of stored food. Critical operations, so this building would probably another one we'd want to think about. And maybe targeted areas in our schools, so the offices, to make sure that if there's a power outage, we can maintain our phone lines. But operating a school in general, and keep in mind the biggest issue is not even necessarily the lighting, which is fairly easy to maintain, but it would be the heating and cooling. Is you would have to generate a lot of power to keep that going. Hospitals are required to have it, and they only target their very critical areas, so to keep their life support going, things like that. For a school district, we have bigger things to deal with, I think, than worry about maintaining power.
Is there anything we need to do today as we're installing these things so that we're ready for the next generation of either fuel cells or whatever it might be?
We'll definitely work with the IES design team, so keep in mind this proposal is very broad and overarching. They still have a lot of design to do, and as a design build scenario, which is what we're kind of in right now, I expect them to be, approaching us as partners in this, and we've had conversations of, as they design it within the parameters of their budget, we'll be looking at that. One of the simplest things that we'll be doing with the PV systems is the solar arrays. When they're actually being put in, they're trenching and bringing conduit back to our facilities, which is very expensive, and also there's some risk to it because in some of our schools we don't necessarily know what's down there. I'm thinking of Calpella in particular. And when we do that, we'll be adding extra pipe, extra conduit, so that if we do need to expand our PV in the future to provide extra generation, we'll certainly be doing that.
Yeah, that's exactly the kind of stuff I meant. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Yes, John, do you have any comments?
Carolyn?
You mentioned our neighbors down Grace Hudson, the ARC. Has this been thoroughly discussed with them, and they know what we're planning and so on?
We have not met with them yet. It's been somewhat of a timing issue. So we are planning that because we had talked about getting that done this summer and working on the MOU with them.
So one thing I would note is that the functionality of their design for this wouldn't change. It wouldn't require major upgrades to the ARC building. So most of their equipment stays the same. In fact, what they will receive out of this is lower utility costs and a control system that they can actually use, which they don't have to date. So
I would just recommend that, so we avoid difficult feelings or whatever, that they're in the loop as soon as possible.
Yes, and that's pretty much next on the list.
Thank you.
Just going back to the broader project, I just want to echo what Trustee Arkin said. I am relying on you to vouch for this project because it feels way over my level of understanding. So I don't want to like put you in the hot seat here, but I'm just saying that we're counting on you to be totally 100% sure that this is a really good idea, or at least I am, because this is, again, outside my scope of being able to predict whether this is a fabulous idea or mediocre or super risky. So,
But no, we feel that we vetted it, and I think all along, Gabe and I both had the mindset that if we didn't reach agreement on what was most beneficial for the district at numerous stages, then it would not be moving forward with our recommendation.
thank you for looking at it in that light.
I have one other note, and I don't know, we tried to get the documents out to you as soon as possible to look at over the weekend, but one of the items to really note is that in this document, there's an O&M agreement, so that's operations and maintenance agreement, that will be triggered with IES when we close out this project, so when it's all built. It's a 10-year agreement. They're paid every year, and that's actually part of the financials. So if you look at it, there's a column that starts out at $15,000 and then escalates by 3% every year. But part of that O&M agreement, and this is one of the things that we really were we were down to the wire on, going back and forth, and I feel we really got what the district needed out of it. I'm not sure how IES feels about me at this point, because we really, we squeezed everything we could out of it, and honestly, we got pretty much everything we asked for. So what it basically says is that 90%, they have a guaranteed baseline production. The financials you saw were based on a minimum of 90% production. If they go below that, IES basically has to pay us for that shortfall, which keeps our cash flow online with what we're budgeting, what we're showing that projection is. And that goes for 10 years, and that's locked in. So we can't get out of it unless the district chooses to. We also have safeguards in place, which basically says, so if IES for some reason dissolves, and I have no expectation they will, they're actually very, they're growing. They've done for many other districts. In fact, probably they're one of the larger companies doing this in California. And they have some very big clients. So they've been doing this for years for other districts. But if for some reason they were to dissolve or go away, we also pulled out all indemnifications. So that means is that we would have a recourse to recoup our costs there too, so.
B?
So I'm assuming then that we will get a yearly backup of this, a report?
So yes, one of the parts of that O&M agreement is that every year IES will do a audit. In fact, they'll be continually monitoring the system, but they'll do a yearly audit. They'll have a yearly report, and in fact, there's a true-up. And that's actually when you go to solar. That's how we actually get billed by PG&E. So everything is looked at that point in a yearly scale,
Okay.
and that is built into that contract.
And we'll get it.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other comments for this public hearing?
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. The hearing is closed. We are going to move to item D4.
Fine.
It's a busy night, Penny.
Is this the resolution we just
This is-
discussed at length? So
Yes.
can I move approval of the resolution number 36?
This is super easy. Any comments? Thank you for waiting around,
Thank
Penny.
you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right. Thank you.
Good job, you guys.
All right. Item D5, we need to talk about a revision to the 2019 board meeting calendar.
So with everything that we just discussed, it's necessary to have a regular board meeting in July. We typically are quiet in July. But with these projects, it is necessary to have the board schedule a regular meeting as opposed to a special meeting. So we would like the board to add the meeting in the month of July, and I believe it's July 12th, Debbie's already checked with you all to make sure that works, so we'd like the board to approve adding a regular board meeting on July 12th.
Will you be present by Skype?
I will not be present, but my amazing colleagues who are just, as you can tell, superstars will be here.
Is that a regular evening meeting?
What time is the meeting?
Oh, it's a noon meeting?
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve the July 12th noon regular meeting, or the addition to the calendar?
I so move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right. And I am going to call a bathroom break or a stretching your legs break.
Got it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. All right. All right, thank you. On to item E1, strategic plan, action plan, and framework revision approval.
So this plan represents the direction that the board gave us in May. At the May board meeting, we've been talking about the strategic plan actions since February. And so this pulls them all into the action plan. There's one change there are a couple of changes to the framework that I don't know that we've discussed thoroughly yet, so I do want to point those out. And one of them, I'm just scrolling down, these are in regard to our metrics. We needed to change the word CELT to LPAC because we no longer give the CELT. So that has been changed. And then also some of the A through G and CTE courses in a pathway, that language has been changed slightly. We weren't sure at the time that we wrote this what direction the state was going to head. And so we looked at meeting or exceeding the state and national average. And what we're trying to do is progressively increase the percent. So we've slightly modified that. And then the chronic absenteeism rate, we'd like to be at the state average or lower, of course. When we originally set our goal, we took a shot at 8%, which is below the state average, which is awesome. The state average is a little over 10%. So we'd like to change that metric to 10% or less. So anyway, those are, and then we also added, in terms of our subgroups that we're monitoring for suspension and expulsion, we added our homeless population in. To really look at that and monitor our homeless population. So we added that into the metrics. So I wanted to share that. Everything else in the strategic plan action plan is as we've discussed, and the changes are highlighted. And that is all.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Are you looking for input right now, or are we just supposed to kind of leave this alone because we're about to do a new process?
Did that not make sense?
I thought that input was being given in May, and
I wasn't proposing anything dramatic.
no, we're asking for approval. We are actually asking for approval of this tonight. And as you all know, this is really our communication document related to LCAP, and we cut and paste everything from our strategic plan into the LCAP template. And so if there are, and the LCAP template gets approved on Thursday, so if there are any changes, we would certainly want to know about those tonight so that we can make the changes in the LCAP.
Okay.
Does anybody have anything?
Carolyn?
I don't have any changes or anything. I just had a couple of questions about the budgeting. Is now the time to ask that? And as I looked further through at the explanations and so on, I found most of the answers. But the CTE funding, Oh, okay. The CTE funding, action, is it 57, is that what it, yeah, action 57, page 22. It says continue to fund CTE at the 18-19 level, but it almost doubled. So I was confused about that.
I'm trying to get to that page number. You said page 22, Carolyn?
Page 22, at least that's what I wrote at home.
The reason for this is that we have the CTIG grant currently. We received a grant to, Katie, I'm on track, right? We received a grant for additional CTE funds, and that grant was expected to go away. And so 2 years ago, we put the new funding amount into the strategic plan. Katie, did you want to give more than that?
So in the CTEIG grant, we funded 2 positions out of that grant and some other funding sources. And so the 3-year grant is ending this year. We have applied for additional CTEIG funds for next year, but it's significantly less than what we expected. So and we haven't gotten that final allocation, or I don't think we've gotten the final number on what we'll receive from CTEIG. So these funds ensure that we can continue with the level of staffing that we've had so far.
Okay. Well, I didn't want to change the level or anything, I just,
Yeah,
it was the wording, because it said continue to fund at the 18-19 level,
Yeah.
but then it was like double the
Yeah.
cost, and I thought, that doesn't make any sense.
Got it. Yeah,
Got
it's
it.
to continue the programs when that grant, we thought the grant funding was going to go away completely from the state. So
Okay.
this, I think we wrote it in 2 years ago, but
Yeah.
this maintains those programs, basically.
Okay.
And if we get grant funding, we'll probably come back to the board and reduce that, because we won't need it all.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that'll, will be
Could we put a
available.
little asterisk or something there, just so that people don't think that Carolyn,
The-
that Steve Barrett didn't catch it? She got it. So maybe we could just say, assuming grant funds are not received or something,
Maybe I'm the only one that didn't understand it. And then I just wanted to clarify too, on the professional development, action 18, it went up from 35,000 to 335,000. And is that because we're extending the PBIS? I'm assuming the training or?
No, that was one of the recommendations from the technical team was to allocate $300,000 for professional development. And so,
Okay, I got it. I
so that,
remember.
and there was originally 35,000 in there.
So
and
that's that 300,000
You got
that
it.
we, okay,
Yes.
all right.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, just a
It's
few
hard to
little
track.
things like
No,
that, I
it's
thought.
good.
Okay, that's it.
On page 28, and I think this is also related to the budget, I meant to bring this up before. On page 28, we still have $118,000 to continue the school resource officer to serve schools outside of the city limits. My understanding is that never happened, and it still is not going to happen. So I was just curious about why we're maintaining $120,000 for a service that won't happen.
So we kept everything in the plan that was in the plan before and have not removed it. I know that there's still a desire in those schools to have somebody. The sheriff's department has not had the personnel to do it. Our promise to the board was we'd come back with a proposal before we did anything. We still don't have that yet. We've had a lot of conversation with probation over the year to see how they might help us. But currently, we don't have a plan in place.
And we did not in the 18-19 school year either.
We did not. We tried.
So that was all savings, the $118,000 that we had
Yes.
to put in there? Okay.
Any other comments? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the strategic plan, action plan, and framework revision? Framework revision.
Including the little asterisk by that one, we will make that change. It's okay, it's good, Carolyn.
You read it that thoroughly, I want you to get credit. I move as amended.
And
I
a
second.
Sorry for interrupting. There's a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. All right. For a record, 3 public hearings in one evening. The public hearing is open to talk about the local control accountability plan, plan de control local y contabilidad.
And before Katie starts, I just want to thank Katie for all of her incredible work on the LCAP. And I just want to note, I know it's on the consent agenda, but we also now have a requirement to do an addendum to the LCAP. The federal government is requiring California to do an addendum. There's probably 14 pages of written narrative in the consent agenda related to requirements of the federal government. And so I just want to thank Katie for all of her amazing work. It's not an easy task to make this project happen. It takes a lot of time, so I appreciate everything that you do, Katie, and your team. But we present to you tonight the LCAP. It is primarily cut and pasted from our strategic plan. So the actions in there represent everything that you see in the strategic plan. There's also the annual update in there. And so tonight, before we jump into the LCAP, and this, like the budget, will get approved at the Thursday at noon meeting. We have to do them in separate meetings. But we wanted to just give you a quick little data update. You also see the fourth quarter strategic plan update. And then we probably won't spend too much time with it, but I just updated the key findings from the survey data for the board as well. So I'll give a couple of highlights on that when you're finished, Katie.
Okay, thank you. So we have some new data to share with you. We did give you an update in April on some of our leading metrics. And tonight we'll be giving you some of our newest data. So as you know, the Dibbles assessment, which has a new name called Acadience that I really can't get used to quite yet. So we're still, yeah, we're still just calling it Dibbles.
And what is the new name?
Acadience. And I think they were trying to combine 2 words together, and I'm not really sure.
Acadians.
Yeah.
Like from New Orleans or something.
Oh,
And did they
yeah.
hire a
Yeah,
consultant and do a study to come up with
I think they're, yeah, I'm not sure. So we're just going to continue to call it Dibbles here for now until we have to change. So every year we assess students with the Dibbles in grades K through 5 3 times a year. So we're looking at our end of year assessments, and that is one of our key metrics that we look at for 3rd grade. And this year, at the end of the year, we had 57% at or above benchmark at the end of the year. So we're really excited about that. As you can see from 16-17, that was a 12% increase. So we're making gains. We'd love to have more students, but we're really moving forward there. So that was great to see. And then also in our SBAC, we have, this is preliminary, but I just wanted to show that we have 34% in ELA standard met or exceeded. And that's up from 23% in 16-17 and up from 30% in 17-18. So we see increases in both, which I think is.
Does that make you feel like then it kind of reinforces?
It kind of reinforces that we're not having, variation. And because we do give the Dibbles assessment is given with staff in the district. So we will be also working on some training in the fall of training people in Dibbles again and just kind of refreshing our training. So a lot of effort's been put into reading this year with the pilot of 95% group, and we're really looking forward to next year.
We've already started training for staff that are in K-1. We have, all the materials have been ordered, and Jenny Ramey, our district TOSA, and Becky Burford, student success coordinator at Nokomis, and Jeanette Spica, reading teacher at Nokomis, all came together and supported those teachers on Monday and Tuesday and Friday to prepare their materials and to explain what each component does. So they're already starting their process there. If we look at beginning, middle, and end of year, you can see we had some really nice gains in kindergarten, and then in first grade, and that is where we did some more intensive work with 95% group, and then kind of flat in the other ones, except for fifth grade. We had some good results in fifth grade this year, so that's looking good. If we look at across the years, how is kindergarten doing from 16-17 to 17-18 and 18-19? We have good increases. This is just looking at the end of year. So we see some good increases in kinder, kind of up and down in first, sort of flat in second, but some good increases in third, and again, some in fifth. And then when we look at cohort data, and they're pretty close cohorts when we look at the numbers. But you can see in 16-17, that group of students were at 34% at the end of the year. Then in 17-18, they were at 43%, and by second grade, they were at 50% at benchmark. And then you can also see first grade, students that came in at first grade in 16-17, 17-18, and then 18-19. So we have some good increases in cohort data as well. And when we go really long and look at 5 years, because now we have 5 years of data, we can see that our current fourth graders in 18-19 improved, and then kind of that, you can see they're sort of flattening out at as they get to third. And then you can see the other cohort who has first through fifth grade data that they started out at 38 and ended up at 47, and we're a little bit flat. But we think now that we've been implementing some stronger interventions at the elementary, these newer cohorts, we're seeing some really good improvements there. So we feel like the efforts that we've been making are making a difference. Any questions on the DIBELS assessment data?
That's great.
Yeah, it's exciting. I'm wondering about the, remember the huge improvement that we saw at Nokomis a year ago? I'm wondering what you've learned about that since then. Yeah, so I didn't pull out individual site data. We'll do that in the fall when we look at kind of everything. But their overall data for DIBELS look good. They had improvements over the year, and their SBAC data is also looking better in English language arts, and that's what we were kind of waiting. They did work on intervention in third grade this year, and the student success coordinator worked a lot with the fourth and fifth grade as well. So they did have improvements in the SBAC as well as the DIBELS data. So we feel like that was that data with some good results that were showing improvements. And we know at kindergarten, that's another reason why we're having some good kindergarten results too, because they had really good kindergarten results this year.
Now, they were using, the DIBELS is just the test, but they were using a slightly different curriculum or a slightly different methodology, teaching methodology?
So they're using an intervention called 95% group.
That's right.
And then, but within that intervention are quite a few assessments, so that are used to help target what intervention, what skills the students need to work on, and then also to look at how they're progressing in those.
Can you make any conclusions yet about the others that are now doing 95% too? Because not all the elementary schools are yet, right?
Yeah, we're not ready yet. We had, we just kind of piloted with a couple teachers at each school site. Usually it was a reading teacher and maybe a first or kinder, so we haven't had enough implementation yet to be able to see that. Next year, though, will be interesting to look at this data
we're hoping to see good gains. English language learners who've been redesignated, we had a 6% increase from last year, not overall. And we were in the prior year, in 15-16, we were at 37%, so we're glad to be back up there. There have been a lot of changes in reclassification and the process, so we were glad to see an improvement there. And then the LPAC from 17-18, we had 21% of the students that were level 4. And level 4 is the level that students have to be able to be reclassified. So no longer does it, the old CELT was 4 or 5, and that was considered proficient. So now they need to score a level 4. So we had 21%, and we have gotten our data for LPAC for 18-19. It's just coming in, and then we'll get that new percentage for 18-19. And when we look at the redesignation rate for 18-19, you can see that at Ukiah, the district, we've improved, and then we have some sites that have gotten some great improvement. Frank Zeke, Eagle Peak's been on a steady rise, Ukiah, and so we're really happy to see a lot of those schools improving. And we have revised our reclassification to represent the level 4. So we'll see what happens there. But good progress there. Rate of teacher misassignment, we've been holding steady at 0.3%. So that's very low. That was one person that, one teacher that was not assigned properly based on their credential. And these are preliminary scores for the EAP. A student is college ready in ELA or math if they score standard exceeded. And so you can see we've declined in ELA, and I'm realizing my math is not correct over on the overall decrease. I did it just from 17-18 to 18-19, not from 16-17. And then our math is up a little bit from 17-18. So that kind of flip-flop from the prior year. And we'll compare that to the state when we get state results in the fall to see how we're doing. But our ELA was down a little bit at the 11th grade. A through G, this is based on the new calculation. We did share this data with you in the fall, but it was in lots of charts. But our A through G, we have a slight decrease, but we're from 3 years ago, but we're bouncing back up from the prior year. We'll share new data with you in the fall. Our AP.
And Katie, I'll just remind, I think we used to be at 17%. So if you looked at the longitudinal data on this longer than 3 years, we've made incredible growth. We want to keep getting higher. I think the high school's goal is 40%. So anyway.
Yeah, and that 40%, they're getting closer and closer, so they'll probably change that to be a little bit higher too. AP, the percent that are scoring with a 3 or higher is going down, but there are more students taking the assessment, or taking tests and the assessment. So we're glad that we're getting more participation that way, but we are seeing a little decline in that. And then SAT, so currently the SAT doesn't give you results how it used to with 1,500 or higher. What they give you is ELA meeting benchmark. And so we had a slight dip in our ELA, but we had a 10% increase in our math, which is great because we want to see that improving. So that was a great thing to see. And then our ACT was up. That is a very small percentage of students taking the ACT right now, just to give you it's about, I think this last year in 17-18 it was about 30 students. So there's not as much participation in that. But so it was really great to see some improvements in math, little bit of a decline in ELA. When we look at our A through G completion rates, we're, and I rounded these percentages just for easier view on the chart, but you can see we, if there's anything that's over a 2% increase or a 2% decrease, then the color changed from yellow. So yellow is basically flat, green is a 3% or more increase, red is a decrease. So we're flat overall right now, but you can see some of our subgroups have had some good improvements, and especially our special ed, which was great to see. And our migrant ed students are doing very well with a large 8% increase. There is, though, as we were looking at this data, there is a large gap between male and female students. We have a 10% gap between those. And so we want to continue to look at that and support students that need that, because we see a gap both in this and we'll see it in the graduation rate. Sufficiency, we've been good. The CTE pathways, you've seen that data before. The percent of on-time graduation, that's the new calculation for grad rate. And we have an overall increase, and we're at 87.4% for 17-18. We'll have new data in the fall. And overall, if you look at, again, the increases and decreases, you can see our Latino students are at 90%, and our migrant ed students are at 90% grad rate. So we're really glad to see those numbers, percentages. And then you can see male and female again, we have a 10% difference in grad rate. So that's, again, we want to continue to support our students, our male students. And our foster youth went down. It's a very small group. We're hoping to see that not have that decline this year. And then same with Native American. And we did do some analysis on the Native American grad rate data. The difference was about 4 students, and those students did enroll in the adult school and eventually graduate. It's just that they aren't counted in this. So, yeah, and it was good that we looked out what happened with that data. The middle school dropout rate, we don't have the new data, but the decrease, we've had a decrease in the high school dropout rate from 5% to 3.9% in 17-18, so that's great. Those are students that truly dropped out. The rest of the students have either graduated, they're in continuing their education through adult school or South Valley. So again, we have a lot of good data in here. We have some data. We know the Native American subgroup, we did have some students that dropped out. So that year they've been focused on that in the Title VI committee. And you can also see that the prior year, the dropout rate between male and female wasn't as great, but it was higher. The difference was higher this year. And lastly, our parent survey, we're still at 83%. We're kind of hanging tough there at 83% of parents who believe they're meaningfully involved in their child's education. And the one area we do need to work on, based on our data here, is the number of parents who are participating in strategic plan LCAP meetings. So we kind of have a plan to make sure we're really reaching out to those parents.
And I know that this will increase next year because of our strategic planning process. We'll have larger stakeholder groups. We'll probably run some things through site councils and other existing parent groups and reach out to the sites instead of having them come to a central meeting, so.
And we'll be back in the fall with updated data and the Smarter Balanced Assessment data as well.
Katie, I'd be interested in seeing, not right this second, the gender breakdown of the students who receive certificates, the 2 course certificates in CTE.
Okay. So kind of, or maybe break that down by all demographics. Okay. Write that down.
So any questions about the LCAP? It will come forward next on Thursday for approval.
Great. What really struck me at the high school graduation, and it was only because it was my daughter's class, they entered high school with about 500 kids. It was one of those blip years. And so I was counting the names to see, and I thought it only looked like about 350. And so it's different when you see that there's these little tiny dropouts over time. But if it's really true that they lost 150 students over 4 years, that's a big problem. So I would love to just talk about that data maybe in September or something when we really have firm figures. Because I think in the incremental changes aren't really showing us the picture, if I suspect the picture is as bad as it could.
I think a lot of those have moved.
Let's hope so. But why wouldn't other people move in?
Housing is too expensive.
But we haven't lost students over
Maybe
Kids that age.
you don't want to move in, you don't have to.
Yeah.
B?
That has always happened. From when my kids, a long time ago, were in school, there were 450, 500 that started as freshmen, and then it dwindled down to 300 and something. Part of them go to South Valley, some go to the adult school, and some move, and then some do drop out, but it's not as high as you would think from that kind of thing. It's always been.
So that doesn't really surprise you,
Oh,
those
no.
statistics?
Oh, no,
Okay, so
I-
it seemed to be more egregious to me this year, but.
No.
It's
But-
been a topic of discussion for 20
Yeah,
years
It
here.
has, yeah.
The union has raised it at various points, and only in the sense that they really wanted the exact circumstances
Yes.
tracked, so that we would know what the true dropout rate was. And so there was some work around that a while ago.
You can track that. CalPADS tracks it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is a cohort. The only reason a student is taken out of the cohort is if they move out of the district or attend a private school. So we do track that. So when we look at the grad rate and the dropout rate, that is really a true cohort. And there are only very few instances when you take students out of the cohort, like moving.
I just wanted to add also, when I first came to the district 7 years ago, we had about 180 students attending South Valley. And our enrollment, I think this year hovered around 120. So I actually think, although it seems like a lot, and I don't have the data in front of me, I think we're retaining more kids than we used to. But that's just based on numbers really at South Valley.
Yes, Megan.
I just wanted to say something generally positive about the apparent increase in some of our indicators, so that's really good to see. Thank you for all of you who've been working really hard on that. And I have been hearing anecdotally from teachers, not very happily, but still, that they are feeling a strong sense of urgency and commitment from their leadership that they need to show some improvement in some of these indicators. So I took responsibility for that when I heard that, and I said, I'm glad to hear that. That's important to the board. So anyway, I'm just good to see it showing up in our results.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
So we'll bring the LCAP back in 2 days.
All right, so are we on to F1?
We are on to F1.
All right, F1, you're on duty.
It is great to start seeing positive results. The most overall results are positive, including preliminary suspension rates and all of that as well. So that's exciting because we have been working hard for a long time, and it's nice to see some strategies paying off. Graduation and promotions they're amazing to attend. It's such a great celebration of all of the hard work of our students and families and staff. And I really appreciate all of the good work, and I feel like our promotion ceremonies and our graduations really represent our community. So it was nice to hear the student speakers at all of our promotion and graduation ceremonies and the performances. We have talented and amazing young people, and it gives me a lot of hope for the future of our community. I have a lot of gratitude for the staff, especially during this time. We have a lot going on, and they keep their positive, happy attitudes, and even rolling into the summer, and I hope everybody has a little bit of a break. Gabe will get one at some point. And I'm just really grateful to the board, too, for hanging in there with us with our trying different things. We will be, you probably saw the newspaper, the grand jury issued a report on charter schools and district collaboration, so we're working on our response to that, and I look forward to giving it. I'm really appreciative of the different choices that we offer in Ukiah for families, both within the district and within our charter schools, so I look forward to responding to that. And we did have a charter school principal participating in our principals network, along with principals from 4 different other counties, and we actually have an additional charter school principal who will be joining us next year. So we do collaborate with our charter schools. Summer school is going on. Started a few days after school got out, and it was fun to see I was at the elementary program, and it was fun to see all of the staff and students most of them had smiling faces. Students, the staff, of course, all had smiling faces. And I think we have about 600 or so kids overall in summer school, so that's a lot. We're excited to serve them. And I just want to thank Doug for his excellent work promoting the district. It was a lot of fun during Classified Employee Appreciation Week to highlight some of our classified employees. It was fun looking at the chatter on Facebook. A lot of people did not know Patty Dow, our crossing guard's name, and so it was nice for our community to get to know her name to put with her smiling face. So anyway, it's been a fun year and a challenging year, and anyway, I'm really grateful to the staff and our wonderful community. It's nice to see our survey results for the community bond survey so positive as well. So I think that's all.
Thank you. Any board reports?
I just wanted to say that I've been very concerned about my granddaughter, and she struggles with reading, and she's finally made a little bit of a breakthrough, and she demonstrated it by reading the poster about the finest tequila you can use to make a margarita in the Mexican restaurant. And her parents just sat there mortified. But it was just interesting because you worry so much about kids, and it is just watching the process never ceases to amaze me. Just takes some kids longer.
That's right. That is fantastic.
Well, I'm glad she found her motivation.
Yes.
Carolyn?
I just wanted to second what Deb said about the graduations. I was really thrilled with the high school graduation. I thought it was one of the best I've seen. And I had so many parents come up to me afterwards and say how wonderful the graduation ceremony was. So I just wanted to send those kudos to Gordon and I really thought it was great.
And Ann?
I just wanted to mention that there's been a lot of talk about PG&E's PSPS program, the Public Safety Power Shutoff, whatever it is. And so I just didn't know if we would have a plan, and if we do have a plan, if we were planning on letting parents know. Because I know there's always this odd reputation that, or belief that schools close or don't close because they either are or are not going to get ADA. And it just makes me so mad that they don't realize that that is not the motivator. So anyway, so I would love for us in our communication to somehow get that little point across too.
We are working on that right now, our plan for power outages and coming up with a couple of different alternative schedules, late start, early release. And we actually talked about it this week and working on communications. I've also reached out to other school districts.
Yeah.
It's so far the districts I've reached out to don't have their plans yet, but they're working on them. So we are all going to collaborate and share information. But we will get something out to parents right at the beginning of the school year.
Just so I understand, I guess I assumed if the power was out, school would not be in session. Is that not the case?
It depends on how many hours it's going to be out. If we know that there's a multiple day outage, yes, we will
Okay.
likely not be in session. Gabe is working up some contingency plans for how to keep the operations side of things going, and related to food service. So we have plans in place, but if we have multiple day outages, right.
Okay.
But if
I just wanted to make sure
the
the
power goes out when
community-
kids are in session, depends on how many hours and
I see. Okay.
all of that. We're not looking forward to that. We'll add it to the list of.
Well, wouldn't ours be a little tricky since we have 3 schools that are PG&E and all the rest are city?
It is tricky, but we have been talking with the city. Their lines are dependent on PG&E lines as well, so they're all connected.
Okay.
The city's having a meeting in a couple of days, about a week. We're sending 4 people to that meeting so we can make sure that we're all on the same page. So,
Thank you.
looking forward to yet another new challenge.
Yeah.
All right, item G1, student expulsions. Is there a motion to expel student AA 06182019 for 1 calendar year?
I so move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? And on a positive note, readmissions. Is there a motion to readmit student AA 06182019?
So moved.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Is there a motion to readmit student BB 06182019?
So moved.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Is there a motion to readmit student CC 06182019?
So moved.
I'll second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Is there a motion to readmit student DD 06182019?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Is there a motion to readmit student EE 06182019?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Be nice to have those students back with us.
Welcome.
Okay. Does item G2, is that on for tonight? Okay. And I'm not sure, so item G2, ratification of superintendent's employment agreement. And am I supposed to have a copy of that? Do you have it? So,
You know what, some people might not have read it. We might want to just read the pertinent part out loud.
okay,
I mean, I read it in the green folder, it was in the green folder, but some people might not have.
okay. In short, I'm supposed to tell everybody that you were reviewed and it was a successful review?
Satisfactory.
It was a, after much conversation, I'm forgetting all the different steps we've taken. Having surveys of staff, the community, the board. The superintendent has passed the test. She has a satisfactory review, which is weird to say because she does an exceptional job. With that in mind, is there a motion to, pardon me, we have the employment agreement in front of us currently. The terms are for an extension of 4 years. Effective July 1, 2019, and each year thereafter, the superintendent shall be paid a step increase of 1% each year to the superintendent base annual salary. The step increase is based on full-time service payable in 12 equal monthly payments. And I think those are the pertinent items. Is there a motion to approve the employment agreement?
So moved.
Second.
Any further conversation? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All
Full
right,
board support.
awesome. And much deserved. All right, item G3, the ratification of our CBO's employment agreement. In case you didn't read it, the terms of the contract, extension of existing contract dated April 15th, 2014 for a period of 4 years, beginning July 1st, 2019 and terminating on June 30th, 2023. The 2023, yeah, thank goodness. Subject to the terms and conditions here and set forth after and so forth and so on. Is there a motion to approve the addendum to the employment agreement with our chief business official?
I so move.
I second with pleasure.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? It is a true relief to have these both done. We are really, really lucky to have both of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Penny.
4 years, thank goodness. All right. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I so move.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Oh, abstentions? All right. We are on to planning. I kind of lost it there at the end.